Sarah Mitchell, 34, pushed her cart through the fluorescent-lit aisles of a Walmart in Cloverdale, Ohio, a small town where the cornfields stretched wider than the opportunities. The cart held the bare necessities: a loaf of white bread, a gallon of milk, a box of off-brand cereal for her kids, Lily, 9, and Noah, 7. Her phone screen glowed with a calculator app, tallying every cent. Her part-time gig at Rosie's Diner paid just enough to cover rent and utilities, but it was a constant game of stretching dollars, of choosing between a new pair of shoes for Noah or gas for the week. Sarah played this game with quiet grit, her kids' laughter the only thing keeping her from crumbling under the weight of it all. Cloverdale was the kind of place where everyone knew your name and your story. Sarah felt the weight of their glances as she moved through the store, her head low to avoid the pity in their eyes. 2 years ago, her husband, Tom, died in a construction accident, leaving her to raise Lily and Noah alone. The life insurance barely covered the funeral, and since then, Sarah had been piecing together a life from scraps. She wasn't one for handouts, pride ran deep, forged from years of making do. Her kids deserved a mom who could stand tall, not one who leaned on charity. But today, as she double-checked her list, a knot of worry tightened in her chest. The numbers weren't adding up, and the math she'd done in her head felt shakier than usual. The store was quiet for a Tuesday morning, the hum of freezers and the occasional squeak of a cart the only sounds. Sarah liked it this way: no crowds to navigate, no familiar faces to dodge. She paused by the cereal aisle, her hand hovering over a box of sugary flakes Lily had begged for. "Just this once," she muttered, tossing it in. The kids deserved a treat, even if it meant skipping her own coffee for the week. She glanced at her phone again. $67.43. Her wallet held $70 in crumpled bills and loose change. It'd be tight, but she could make it work. She always did. Sarah's life wasn't glamorous, but it was hers. The diner shifts were long, the tips meager, but she learned to smile through the exhaustion. At home, their tiny apartment smelled of laundry detergent and the crayons Lily scattered across the kitchen table. Noah's sneakers sat by the door, one sole flapping loose, a reminder of another expense she couldn't yet afford. But every night, when she tucked them in, their sleepy, "I love you," mom made the grind worth it. They were her why, her everything. As she neared the checkout, Sarah's mind drifted to the weekend. Maybe she'd take the kids to the park, let them run wild while she caught a moment to breathe. She pictured Lily's grin, Noah's endless questions about bugs and clouds. Those moments were her anchor, proof she was doing something right. But the weight of Cloverdale's small-town gaze never fully left her. She'd heard the whispers at the diner, the sympathetic "poor Sarah" comments from regulars. They meant well, but each one chipped away at her armor. She didn't want pity. She wanted respect for her kids, for the life she was clawing together. Sarah reached the front of the store, her cart lighter than most but heavy with intention. She'd planned this trip down to the penny, or so she thought. The cashier's station loomed ahead, a finish line that always felt like a test. She took a deep breath, smoothing her worn jacket, and began unloading her items onto the belt. Milk, bread, cereal. Each scan was a small victory, a step toward getting home to her kids. But as she watched the total climb on the register screen, a flicker of doubt crept in. Had she missed something? Miscalculated? Her fingers tightened around the cart's handle, the familiar rhythm of her careful life suddenly feeling like it might unravel. Sarah Mitchell stood at the Walmart checkout in Cloverdale, Ohio, her heart pounding as she unloaded her carefully chosen groceries onto the conveyor belt. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a harsh glow on her worn jacket and the meager contents of her cart: milk, bread, a box of cereal for her kids, Lily and Noah. She'd calculated $67.43 in her head, her phone's calculator app confirming it. With $70 in crumpled bills and coins, she was cutting it close, but she'd done this dance before. The cashier, a young woman named Jenna with a bored smirk, scanned each item with a flick of her wrist, the beep of the register a steady rhythm. Sarah's fingers gripped the cart, her pride tethered to this moment. She'd make it work, like always. "That's $87.43, Jenna said, her voice flat, eyes already drifting to the next customer. Sarah froze, the number hitting like a punch. 87? Her mental math had never failed her this badly. Her cheeks flushed as she fumbled for her wallet, the worn leather trembling in her hands. I must have miscalculated," she stammered, pulling out bills and digging for coins. She counted $67, then again, her heart sinking as the shortfall glared back. $20 short. The air thickened, the hum of the store fading under the weight of her panic. Jenna sighed, loud enough to draw eyes. "Ma'am, you're holding up the line." Sarah glanced back, the people behind her shifting impatiently. A guy in a trucker hat muttered, "Can't pay? Don't shop." A woman with a toddler clicked her tongue, her stare sharp with judgment. Sarah's throat tightened, her pride crumbling like dry leaves. She reached for the cereal, Lily's favorite, the one she'd promised as a treat, and set it aside, then the milk, each item a small betrayal of her kid's trust. Her hand shook, coins clinking as she recounted them, desperate for a miracle that wasn't coming. The line's murmurs grew louder, a chorus of irritation. "Some people shouldn't even try," a voice hissed, low but cutting. Sarah's face burned, the shame swallowing her whole. She'd faced hard days, diner shifts with no tips, Noah's shoes falling apart, but this was different. This was public, raw, a spotlight on her struggle. She wanted to shrink, to run, to erase the moment. But her kids were waiting at home, and abandoning the cart wasn't an option. She swallowed hard, forcing her voice steady. "Can you take off the cereal and the bread?" she asked, hating how small she sounded. Jenna rolled her eyes, voiding the items with exaggerated slowness. "Anything else?" she snapped, her tone dripping with disdain. Sarah's chest ached, the weight of every stare pressing harder. She was no stranger to scraping by, but this felt like a betrayal, not just of her budget, but of who she was. She clawed her way through 2 years as a widow, raising Lily and Noah alone after Tom's death. She'd never asked for pity, never leaned on anyone. Yet here she was, dissected by strangers who saw her as less. Just as Sarah braced to abandon more items, a soft voice broke through. "I'll cover it." An older man, late 60s, stepped forward from the line, his worn jacket and kind eyes a stark contrast to the crowd's impatience. He handed Jenna a crisp $20 bill, his expression calm but firm. Sarah's breath caught, gratitude colliding with embarrassment. "I'll pay you back," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The man, Henry, she'd later learn, shook his head gently. "No need," he said, his tone carrying a quiet strength. Jenna took the money with a scoff, muttering under her breath, "Lucky break." The transaction finished, and Sarah packed her bags, her hands trembling not from shame now, but from a mix of relief and resolve. She thanked Henry again, her voice thick, and hurried out, the winter air biting her cheeks as she fled the store's suffocating judgment. But the sting of Jenna's words and the crowd's glares lingered, a wound that wouldn't close. Sarah knew this wasn't just about $20. It was about a system that humiliated people like her, that turned struggle into spectacle. As she drove home to Lily and Noah, her mind churned. She wasn't just a single mom scraping by. She was a fighter, and this fight was far from over. Sarah Mitchell drove home from the Walmart in Cloverdale, Ohio, the sting of the checkout ordeal still raw. The winter dusk painted the sky in bruised purples, and her old sedan rattled as she gripped the wheel, the grocery bags in the back a bitter reminder of her public humiliation. She'd been $20 short, forced to pull back Lily's favorite cereal under the judgmental glares of strangers. Jenna, the cashier, had rolled her eyes, her muttered, "Lucky break," cutting deeper than the crowd's whispers. Only Henry Brooks, the kind-eyed older man who'd covered the shortfall, had offered a shred of dignity. Sarah's gratitude for his $20 was tangled with shame, but also a spark of defiance. She wasn't just a struggling single mom, she was a fighter, and this wasn't over. At home, Sarah unpacked the groceries in her cramped apartment, the scent of laundry detergent mixing with the crayons scattered across the kitchen table. Lily and Noah were at a neighbor's, giving her a rare moment to process. She replayed the scene, Jenna's smirk, the trucker hat guy's sneer, the weight of every stare. She'd spent 2 years rebuilding after Tom's death, pouring every ounce of herself into Lily and Noah. She'd never asked for pity, yet Cloverdale's small-town gaze had branded her a charity case in one brutal moment. Her hands trembled as she folded the reusable bags, not from fear now, but from a growing fury. This wasn't just about a miscalculation, it was about a system that shamed people for being human. The next morning, Sarah was back at Rosie's diner, pouring coffee for regulars who tossed her sympathetic smiles. She forced a grin, but her mind was elsewhere. She'd thanked Henry again in her head, vowing to repay him, not just with money, but by proving she was more than her worst moment. Then, as she cleared a table, she overheard a conversation that stopped her cold. Jenna, off shift and sipping soda at the counter, was gossiping with a coworker. "That Mitchell lady? Always broke, scrounging for handouts. Some old guy had to bail her out yesterday. Pathetic." The coworker laughed, and Sarah's blood ran hot. Her hands clenched around the dish rag, the betrayal sharper than the checkout line's glares. Jenna hadn't just humiliated her, she was twisting the story, painting Sarah as a leech. By afternoon, the rumor had spread like wildfire. At the school pickup, Sarah caught whispers from other parents, their pitying looks now laced with disdain. Lily ran to her, eyes red. "Mom, kids at school said we're poor. Is that true?" Noah trailed behind, silent but watching, his 7-year-old face too serious. Sarah knelt, forcing a smile. "We're rich in love, baby. Don't listen to them." But inside, she was breaking. Her kids were collateral damage in Jenna's careless cruelty, and that was unforgivable. She hugged them tight, her resolve hardening. This wasn't just personal anymore. It was about protecting her family's dignity. Sarah's anger fueled action. She started by tracking down Henry, learning from a diner regular that he owned Brooks Markets, a local grocery chain including the Walmart. His act of kindness hadn't been random. He was a man who'd risen from nothing, someone who understood struggle. Sarah saw an opportunity, not for revenge, but for change. She spent the evening at her kitchen table, drafting a letter to Henry. She thanked him for his help, then pitched an idea: sensitivity training for store staff to prevent others from enduring the shame she'd faced. Her words were measured but fierce, her pride channeled into purpose. She mailed it the next day, her heart pounding with hope and fear. Meanwhile, the gossip grew uglier. At the diner, a customer joked, "Heard you're Cloverdale's new charity queen, Sarah." She bit her tongue, but the sting lingered. Then came the real blow. Noah came home with a torn backpack, saying kids had teased him about living off handouts. Sarah's vision blurred with tears, but she refused to crumble. She helped Noah tape his bag, promising, "We'll fix this, buddy." That night, she dug deeper, talking discreetly with other Walmart shoppers. She learned Jenna's rudeness wasn't a one-off. Customers had complained about her snark for months, but the store manager, Mike, dismissed every report. Sarah's instincts flared. There was a pattern here, a deeper rot, and she'd expose it. When Henry's response arrived, a handwritten note inviting her to his office, Sarah felt a surge of possibility. She prepared meticulously, gathering customer stories and jotting notes on her training idea. The meeting was days away, but the rumors kept spreading, each one a test of her resolve. At the diner, Jenna's coworker smirked, "Heard you're begging for favors now, Sarah." She met the jab with a steady gaze. "You'll see what I'm made of," she said, her voice low but ironclad. Sarah was done being Cloverdale's punching bag. She'd turn her pain into power, not for pity, but for justice, and for Lily and Noah, who deserved a mom who fought back. Sarah Mitchell sat at her kitchen table in Cloverdale, Ohio, the dim glow of a single bulb casting shadows across the crayon-strewn surface. Outside, the winter wind rattled the windows of her small apartment, but inside, a fire burned in her chest. The humiliation at the Walmart checkout, being $20 short, Jenna's sneer, the crowd's judgmental whispers, had morphed into something bigger, a betrayal that reached her kids, Lily and Noah, through cruel schoolyard taunts and small-town gossip. Jenna's words at the diner, branding Sarah a pathetic charity case, had spread like poison, and the pain of seeing Lily cry and Noah's torn backpack fueled a resolve Sarah hadn't known she possessed. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for her family's dignity, and she'd do it her way. Smart, legal, and unrelenting. Sarah's first move had been bold but calculated. She confronted Jenna privately at the Walmart, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. "Your gossip hurt my kids," she said, locking eyes with the young cashier. "You don't know my story, but you'll learn to respect me." Jenna shrugged and half-hearted. Whatever, only steeled Sarah's resolve. She wasn't after an apology, she wanted change. Learning that Henry Brooks, the kind older man who'd covered her $20, owned Brooks Markets, including the Walmart, had lit a spark. Sarah had poured her heart into a letter to him, thanking him and proposing sensitivity training for staff to spare others her shame. His response, a handwritten note inviting her to his office, felt like a lifeline, a chance to turn her pain into purpose. Now, as she prepared for the meeting, Sarah's nerves hummed. She sat with a notebook, jotting down ideas for the training. Empathy exercises, role-playing customer scenarios, policies to protect shoppers' dignity. She'd gathered stories from other Walmart customers, discreetly confirming Jenna's rudeness wasn't a one-off. Shoppers had complained about her snark for months, and the store manager, Mike, had brushed them off, his dismissive, "It's just Jenna being Jenna," a red flag. Sarah's instincts screamed there was more to it. Mike's inaction hinted at deeper issues. She'd started documenting dates, names, specific incidents, all gathered legally through casual chats and online reviews. If she was going to face Henry, she'd come armed with facts, not just feelings. The day of the meeting, Sarah stood outside Henry's modest office in downtown Cloverdale, her heart pounding. She'd swapped her diner apron for a thrift store blazer, her hair pulled back to hide the nerves. Inside, Henry greeted her with a warm smile, his eyes crinkling in a way that eased her tension. "You've got fire, Sarah," he said, gesturing to a chair. "I like that." Over coffee, he shared his story, starting as a stock boy, building Brooks Markets from a single store, losing his wife to cancer a decade ago. "I helped you that day because I felt small too," he said. "No one deserves that." Sarah nodded, her throat tight. His words mirrored her own fight, not for pity, but for respect. She pitched her training program, her voice gaining strength as she outlined its goals, fostering empathy, ensuring no customer left feeling less than human. She shared the customer complaints about Jenna, careful not to sound vengeful, and hinted at Mike's negligence without accusing outright. Henry leaned forward, his gaze sharp. "You've done your homework," he said, impressed. "I'm in. Let's start the training. And I want you to lead it, part-time. You up for it?" Sarah hesitated, pride warring with practicality. Taking the job felt like accepting help, but it was also a chance to prove herself. "I'm in," she said, her voice firm. Back home, Sarah dove into the role, balancing diner shifts with late nights designing the training. She felt alive, her purpose clear. But the gossip in Cloverdale persisted, a constant test of her resolve. At the diner, a regular smirked, "Heard you're cozying up to the big boss now, Sarah." She met his gaze, unflinching. "I'm earning my place," she said, her tone leaving no room for doubt. Meanwhile, she kept digging into Mike's management. A customer mentioned offhand that Mike often forgot to log complaints, and another hinted at inventory discrepancies. Sarah noted it all, her evidence growing, but she stayed cautious, knowing accusations without proof could backfire. Henry's mentorship became her anchor. He checked in weekly, offering advice and sharing stories of his own battles. "You're not just fighting for you," he told her once. "You're fighting for everyone who's ever felt invisible." His words fueled her, but so did Lily and Noah. One night, as she tucked them in, Noah asked, "Are you going to make things better, Mom?" Sarah kissed his forehead. "I'm trying, buddy." Their trust pushed her forward, even as the weight of Cloverdale's judgment loomed. Sarah was no longer the charity queen. She was a force, building a case, a program, and a future, one careful step at a time. Sarah Mitchell stood in the community center in Cloverdale, Ohio, her hands steady as she adjusted the microphone. The room buzzed with locals, their faces a mix of curiosity and skepticism, but Sarah's focus was unshakable. Months ago, she'd been humiliated at the Walmart checkout, $20 short and stung by cashier Jenna's scorn and a judgmental crowd. The gossip that followed, branding her a charity case, had wounded her kids, Lily and Noah, and ignited a fire in Sarah. With Henry Brooks, the store chain owner who'd covered her shortfall, as her mentor, she'd turned pain into purpose, launching a sensitivity training program to ensure no one else faced her shame. Now, she was ready to unveil her biggest victory yet, not just for herself, but for Cloverdale. Sarah's journey had been grueling but transformative. Her training program rolled out across Brooks Markets, earning praise from employees who once scoffed at customer empathy. Shoppers noticed the difference, smiles replaced sneers, and complaints dropped. Sarah's confidence grew, her voice commanding as she led workshops, teaching staff to see customers as people, not problems. But her fight wasn't just about training. She'd uncovered a pattern of negligence by store manager Mike, who ignored complaints about Jenna's rudeness and, she suspected, hid deeper issues. Sarah had gathered evidence meticulously, customer testimonies, online reviews, whispered hints of inventory discrepancies, all legal, all airtight. The turning point came when Sarah presented her findings to Henry. In his office, she laid out a folder of documented complaints, her voice steady but fierce. "Jenna's behavior is a symptom," she said. "Mike's the root. He buries complaints and, I think, more." Henry's eyes narrowed, his respect for her clear. He launched an internal audit, and the truth unraveled. Mike had been skimming funds to cover inventory losses, pocketing the difference. Henry fired him on the spot, his voice cold but fair. "No one undermines my stores or my customers." Jenna, after a formal warning, enrolled in Sarah's training, her attitude softening as she faced the consequences of her words. Sarah didn't gloat. She mentored Jenna, seeing a chance for redemption. Cloverdale began to see Sarah differently. The whispers of charity queen faded, replaced by nods of respect. At Rosie's diner, Regulars stopped pitying her, instead asking about her program. Lily and Noah felt it too. One evening, Lily beamed. "My teacher said you're making the store nicer, Mom." Noah, taping his once-torn backpack, added, "You're like a superhero." Sarah laughed, but their pride fueled her. Henry, her steady guide, saw her potential beyond training. "You've got a head for business," he said, hinting at a bigger role in Brooks Markets. Sarah, once wary of his help, now saw it as a partnership, earned through her grit. Tonight's event was the culmination. Sarah took the stage, her thrift store blazer swapped for a crisp blouse, her nerves tempered by purpose. She announced the Brooks Community Scholarship, a fund Henry created in her name for single parents pursuing education or job training. "This is for those who fight every day," she said, her voice clear. "For those who feel invisible but keep going." The crowd erupted in applause, and Sarah's eyes found Henry's in the back. His nod was quiet but profound, a salute to her triumph. Even Jenna, in the audience, clapped, her earlier apology to Sarah genuine, a sign of growth. As the event ended, Sarah stepped outside, the cool Ohio night wrapping around her. Lily and Noah ran to her, hugging her tight. "You did it, Mom." Noah cheered. Sarah knelt, her heart full. "We did it," she corrected, ruffling their hair. Later, at home, she tucked them in, the apartment's familiar crayons scent now a comfort. "We're not just surviving," she told them. "We're building something." Their sleepy smiles were her true reward. Henry visited the next day, his eyes crinkling with pride. "You've changed Cloverdale, Sarah," he said. "And me." He shared his plan to step back from Brooks Markets, asking her to take a leadership role. Sarah didn't hesitate this time. "I'm ready," she said, her voice a promise. The town's perception had shifted. She was no longer the struggling widow, but a leader, a force. Jenna, now a model employee, thanked Sarah for showing her a better way. Cloverdale's sunset, painting the sky gold, and Sarah stood on her porch, watching her kids play. She'd turned pain into power, her family's future not just secure, but bright.